security advisor and congressman, and has of late been vocal against China. A graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis, Mr. Golez also once served as Postmaster General. Welcome to the show, Secretary Golez.
Thank you so much, Pia.
And also Rafi Aluna, Interior Secretary to former President Fidel Ramos. Secretary Aluna has been in the limelight lately, mainly for two things: ran for center with President Duterte, and like Secretary Golez, has been a vocal China critic. Although, sir, you did go with FDR to help break the ice in Beijing.
That's correct.
Hong Kong. And so now you are the deputy team leader.
That's correct.
To the special envoy.
That's right.
Okay, and just 2 weeks ago you were in Beijing for a visit arranged by the Chinese think tank.
By the Chinese ambassador, and I was with the delegation of the Philippine Council for Foreign Relations.
Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about that. Sure, we have some interesting things to share there. But anyway, on Wednesday evening, President Duterte told the Filipino community in Hanoi he didn't want any more of those joint military exercises with American forces, and he said that in Vietnam, a country that has an even more complex and violent history with the United States, the U.S. must be worried. This is the President in his own words.
Serving notice now
Ilan po to?
to the Americans.
Run the time.
Ilan daw po to?
I will
Ilan
maintain
daw po?
the military alliance with the RPU's pact,
Last 30.
which our country signed in the early 50s. But I
Total running
will
time.
establish new
Ang
alliances
ganda
with
running time
China.
daw po nito.
And you are scheduled
Simula po
one
kanina
occasion,
yan.
which China does not want. I would serve notice to you now that this will be the last.
42 daw po to, ma'am.
Jointly,
Opo.
Philippines, US, the last one.
Now, earlier on Monday, President Duterte again talking about how much farther he could take Manila away from its cozy relations with Washington, D.C.
To cross the Rubicon.
Sir, what
The
is the
point of no
foreign
return.
funds?
It is the point of
Ilan daw po?
Hindi, I mean, actually, I'm ready to, not really break ties, but we will open up alliances with China. And I said I had a good time, good talk with the Prime Minister. They're awaiting. After China, I think I'll go to Japan and I'll go to Russia. And never mind. I will open up the Philippines for them to do business. Alliances of trade and others.
Well, like I said earlier, join us in the show, Secretary Luna and Secretary Golez. There are warnings coming up on Tuesday, October 4th to the 12th, amphibious landing exercises. And the clarification was forthcoming that what are up for negotiations or warnings for next year. So what does this mean when President Duterte says no more war games?
Well, first, what does it really mean? Because the following day, there was a clarification from two cabinet members. Secretary Yasay said that no, it's not going to be the last exercise. We're still talking of 2017 and even beyond for review. And the spokesman, Secretary Abella, also made that clarification. So right now, I'm a little confused. And Pia, we're talking not only of military exercises between the U.S. and the Philippines, starting in 1951. We're talking of actual wars where the two, side by side, fought together against an enemy, the Second World War, Bataan, Corridor, and then the liberation of the Philippines, and then Korea. About more than 100 Filipinos died side by side with the Americans in the Korean War. And then, although it's a non-combat mission, the Philippines also sent a contingent to Vietnam, side by side with American forces. It's almost not just a military relationship, a cultural relationship. Not to mention that practically all of the senior officials of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, Air Force, Army, Navy, practically all of them went to advanced studies, schoolings in the United States, Fort Bragg, Fort Benning, Naval War College, a postgraduate school in Monterey, even civilian schools. So this is not just a military tie-up, but it's almost a cultural, social relationship. Not to mention that the Secretary of Defense, for example, spent more than 10 years stationed in the United States versus Defense Attaché, then as a Veterans Attaché, and in the capacity interlinked with the U.S. government on the veterans affairs.
They're about to get the Congressional Gold Medal Award bill passed.
That's right. So
So
it's
so-
quite
so
a
it-
deep
yeah.
relationship.
Yeah.
And if you try to sway that towards a country like China, for example, which is, to me, in principle, it's good. But it should not be a win-lose proposition. It could be an add-on to an expanding diplomatic and military relationship. It should not be a zero-sum game where one gain will be the loss of the other. It's good for us to interact also with other countries aside from the U.S., the NATO countries.
Yeah. But
South
what are we
Korea.
supposed to make of this when President Duterte says these are our last war games, that there's war games coming up next week, and then you have that clarification, like you said, two secretaries saying the
That is
opposite.
confusing.
This is not the last. No, so how do we make sense of the secretary?
It's too early to make sense out of it because I think we have to hear from President Duterte himself. The way I see it, I don't think we can just do away with the war exercises, the war game exercises under VFA. Because as I understand it, there are about 262 such exercises planned out for 2017. And these are all focused on territorial defense. But even for that matter, if, for example, just the military exercises for combat were ceased, temporarily held in abeyance, there's still other exercises such as HKDR, such as humanitarian assistance and disaster rescue, and other kinds of exercises where they're not necessarily related to combat, but are still necessary for interoperability, which is a tradition between both countries now. So it's not going to be very easy to let go of something like that. But as I understand the strategic intent of President Duterte, as he himself said, he says he's not going to cut ties with the United States, nor is he going to set aside the treaty. What he wants to do is, and this is what Roy also adverted to, he wants to expand relations with other countries, particularly in the economic field. So I think what he wants to work out is a win-win arrangement for the Philippines based on our national interest. It's primarily the Philippine national interest that he's pushing, and that is adjusting relations with the United States, China, and other countries.
Yeah.
For that matter, even China, last week when we were there, when I was there with the Philippine Council for Foreign Relations, when we met with Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs, Liu Jianmin, he was very careful with his words, and he said, we note that the Philippines is now balancing relations, which is good because we need stability in the South China Sea region, and it's not good to have imbalances in relations.
So right now what we have is an imbalance, at least according to at least how Beijing sees this.
The way perhaps even the president saw it, it was the relationship with the United States was too much in favor of it at the expense of other countries. So he's just simply trying to bring it back to even keel. But that's being misunderstood. That's being seen as abandoning a long-time ally in favor of another country.
Could it be, it is being misunderstood because it is also happening in the context of, we just came out with this arbitral tribunal decision July 12 that, that favored the Philippines stand on the South China Sea.
I've heard President Duterte say, not once but many times, that we cannot do away with the arbitral That's a given. That's a given. But what he wants to do is he wants to broaden relations with China, notwithstanding the fact that we have this contentious issue affecting both countries. And that's where, in fact, the mission of President Ramos comes in.
Yeah. Well, there was an interesting portion of the president's remarks when he said, and we quote, and we showed it just a while ago, and you are scheduled to hold war games which China does not want. So if China doesn't want it, then we can't have it.
That's very puzzling because we should do something or not do something, not because one side wants it or not want it. Otherwise, it will not be an independent foreign policy. But we should do it for our national interest. In this particular case, if China, for example, says that there's some kind of an imbalance, well, there is an imbalance between China and the Philippines. We're talking about a super big country whose economy is more than 20 times our economy, whose military is probably 1,000 times our military. So in the case of the Philippines, since there is a territorial conflict and a serious one, they're claiming about 80% of our exclusive economic zone. They have mischief reef. They already reclaimed it, and they can easily militarize it. They're looking at Scarborough Shoal. They have blockaded Scarborough Shoal, Ayungin Shoal. They've also blockaded. Being a small country, we need balance, and the way to balance that is alliance. We need help. If, for example, we stay neutral, then the imbalance will be against our favor. So in this particular case, it's going to be balancing against our interests.
But if we were going to be friendlier with Beijing, will that, how are we going to regain, are we going to get back these islands,
We can be friendly if they renounce their claim over our exclusive economic zone, because that claim still stands. In fact, one of their conditions, and their precondition for a serious bilateral talk is for us to accept their sovereignty, which is of course not acceptable, especially considering that we just won a big, hard-fought battle in the Arbitral Tribunal, and then simply ignore that or even forbid that. That will be terribly against the interests of the country.
Secretary Luna, can you help us understand what President Duterte might have meant when he said the schedule to war games which China does not want?
Well, I myself would like to ask him what he really meant by that. Honestly, I'm baffled, because if we want to promote our national interest, he didn't have to say it that way. But I'd like to say again that I think his strategic intent is to expand. He uses the word alliances now. Yeah, expand relations with other countries. But he specifically mentioned in the video that he's looking at economic relations more than military relations. Because he also said very specifically that he doesn't intend to cut ties and break the treaty with the United States. So, reading between the lines, he'd like to position the Philippines in a manner that we promote goodwill to all, with malice toward none. However, I think that because he is new in this game, he has just been thrust onto the international stage. He needs more time to process with his core team what to say, how to say it, how to deal with the big powers in the region. I hate to say this, but we're no longer in Davao, where he's got things under control. The world stage, there are too many actors, there are too many variables out there that we can't control. So we have to be very, very careful about what we say, what we do, and how we behave on stage.
Well, I have two more questions which we'll take up in the next gap, but there's more. There's more that came from more talk about how President Duterte's words, his remarks are reshaping, in a way, foreign policy. We'll be right back. maybe he's thinking as